Tech giant Meta began blocking Canadian news on its platforms like Facebook and Instagram at the beginning of August. It's in response to the federal government's Online News Act, also known as Bill C-18. The act requires tech companies to compensate Canadian news outlets for stories posted on social media. And while the blocking has affected larger news outlets, like the CBC, it's also hurting the smaller ones. Amy Seneman is the editor-in-chief of the Nate Nugget student newspaper. She's also vice president of the Canadian University Press, which connects student publications across the country. And Amy joins us in studio. Good morning, Amy.
Thanks for having me.
So what did you initially think about Bill C-18?
It was pretty scary. We at the Nugget rely heavily on social media to connect with our audience. Students use Instagram. Students like getting their news on Instagram, and they're kind of coached to follow institutional Instagrams to stay up to date. So when I heard that Meta was going to be blocking, I was a little bit nervous about what we were going to do. There's a lot of uncertainty, too, because we didn't know if we would be blocked because we're not technically included under C-18.
Right. So what happened then when the blocking began?
We had a lot of conversations. We had to pivot a lot of what are we going to do now. I talked to kind of the student association. I talked to my team. I talked to the people at CUP to figure out how we can connect with students.
What is CUP again?
The Canadian University Press.
Right.
So we talked a lot about what are we going to do, how are we going to connect to students, and then it's a lot of advocacy through CUP too. We've talked to the Canadian Senate. We've encouraged all of our members to reach out to their MPs. We're meeting with the Canadian Heritage Ministry next week just to kind of talk about how, you know, we aren't technically included in C-18, but we're caught in the crossfire and kind of getting the punishment despite not any potential for financial compensation if they reach a negotiation.
Because you would not be included in it if there was to be financial compensation.
Yeah.
Now, did you find your stuff was being blocked right away?
So it was a little bit strange. It took a while. There was a lot of panicked messages in our CUP communication channels of like, oh, I'm blocked. Oh, I'm blocked. But yeah, we did get blocked middle of August, end of August. And it was not a fun feeling.
Now, Meta told CBC that media outlets can apply for a review. Now, is that something the Nate Nugget did?
Yes, we did review. There's an appeal process, and I am hopeful, and I'm happy that there is one. But Meta doesn't give you a lot to go off of. There's no contact. There's no phone number. There's no even expected timeline of when I might hear if we'll get unblocked. So I'm kind of throwing it out into the wind and hoping that they will listen to our pleas.
Right. I mean, you don't even know if anybody's reading your emails,
exactly.
Right? There's no response. So what has the response been from the students who would read the Nugget and generally might get it on Instagram here and there?
A lot of them honestly don't know, which is another issue. A lot of people don't go to the feed or go to the profile directly, right? They're just looking for things in the feed, and maybe they don't even notice that they're not seeing the Nugget. We've been doing a lot of in-person promotion this week, and I've had to say to people, well, you can follow us on Instagram, but you're not going to see anything because of Meta blocking news. And then it kind of opens a conversation of why is that happening? Mm-hmm. So part of the struggle is just the education of students not even realizing it's happening or realizing the negative consequences of not having easy access to news.
So what kind of things would the Nugget cover? And what kind of message are you trying to get out to the students, obviously, and maybe not having access to them now?
Yeah, we're essentially community journalism, right? We represent the 40,000 so students, the community at NATE. So we cover news, policy changes, tuition upgrades, anything kind of happening at NATE that students need to know about. But it's also fun stuff like where can you study, or how do you access resources at NATE, or here are some cool stories of alumni that maybe will inspire students. So essentially, we're just like any other community newspaper, just on a campus-wide scale. So it's a little bit scary that, students are very inundated with messages, especially at the beginning of the semester, and now they can't have one place that everything is consolidated. So maybe they don't know that there are new changes to accommodated testing or new changes to the loanable policies. They're not getting that kind of important information.
Do you come out with a physical newspaper?
Yep.
And how often?
We print 3 times a semester, but as everybody knows, print is hit or miss these days. So we're definitely trying to print or push the print issue, but not everything goes in print, right? We have a website as well, and we print a lot of stuff on there that doesn't ever go into the print issue.
How do the student? I assume most of your staff are volunteer students, are they?
We have a small staff of about 6 part-time editors that are still students,
Yeah.
but they get paid a salary, and then everything else is written by students. And we actually do pay them. We're one of the only ones that do, but everything's kind of on a freelance as you can basis.
And how are they feeling about this for them? I mean, obviously they want to get their product out there,
Yeah,
right?
that's a great point. We had a lot of engagement from writers sharing their stories with their friends and family, or being like, look what I did, using it almost as a portfolio. And now they don't have easy availability to do that as well. They can still do it on like Twitter or X or TikTok, but like Instagram really was the main place that people were sharing and commenting and reposting.
I think a lot of people who might be, say, over 50 may not realize that is where a lot of young people are getting their news and get connected to these stories that might be online somewhere else, and then they'll go to that online space and find it. But if they can't find it first, they won't go there.
Yeah, and I'm really scared. Google hasn't joined the foray yet, but they have kind of threatened, casually mentioned that they might. So not being able to even search the Nugget or search any news online is really scary. And a lot of my students and a lot of CUP members are really frightened about, how are you going to do research as journalists? How are you going to find the articles? How are you going to find easy news if you can't even Google it?
Yeah, that's true. So what's next? What action do you hope to take?
We're kind of in a hard place because there's not too much we can do aside from talking to people, making appearances like this, talking to the government, encouraging people to talk about the government. From trying to get our news standpoint out there, it's a lot of pivoting. We're going to be doing a lot more TikToks, a lot more in-person promotion, a lot more posting on Twitter. From a CUP standpoint, we went to the Senate. We're encouraging members to email their MPs. We're talking to the Canadian Heritage Ministry. We sent an email to Meta, but who knows if they've seen it or will read it. But yeah, it's just a lot of advocacy and a lot of trying to talk to people and talk about how, this isn't super fair. We're kind of caught up in the crossfire.
Right. So can we find the Nugget online?
Absolutely. You can visit us on www.thenuggetonline.com. Follow us on TikTok @TheNateNugget or on Twitter @TheNateNugget. Those are probably your best ways. If you want to get Nate news, you can sign up for our newsletter. Lots of other ways.
That's awesome. Well, Amy, thanks for coming in this morning. We appreciate you, explaining this to everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.